I think that if your goal is self-actualization, right, and if you're watching this video, it's probably part of your goal, then to truly go inside of yourself, one of the first things you have to understand, really understand, is what's going on in your external, how the external works. If you don't understand truly what's going on out here, then you don't really have an objective basis to understand what's going on in here. And so the first step to understanding your external, I think, should be understanding how almost everything external to you is basically designed to turn you into a more ideal consumer. And so you're probably saying to yourself, like, yeah, I know that, but I promise, like, you don't know. And what you think you know, I would almost guarantee, is extremely superficial. And in this video, we're going to go very, very deep. So if you want to truly benefit from this video, stop doing the 10 things you're doing, or stop thinking about the 10 things you're thinking about, and seriously pay attention. Because if your goal is true self-actualization, this is one of the single most important lessons that I can share. This was absolutely one of the most important lessons for me. So let's start with the basics, right? Capitalism is the system, it's the framework. Capitalism maximizes profit. And as capitalism evolves, it continues to get better and better at maximizing profit. And so the natural byproduct of a system designed to maximize profit is consumerism. So the better you are at being a consumer, the more profit there is to be made. And as capitalism continues to evolve, an evolution characterized by maximizing profit, consumerism will also evolve to make you better and better at consuming things. Now, you and I were both born into capitalism, and so literally from the moment we're born, we're only taught the external nature of things. Like, we are taught to consume. The word consume itself is has inherently external implications, since to consume, that means you are effectively taking something outside of you, external to you, and using it to feed yourself, right? You're consuming it. And make no mistake, humans as creatures, we need to consume. It's just that within a capitalist framework designed to maximize profit, we overconsume. Most people have never actually gone inside of themselves. And I'm going to say that again. Most people have never actually gone inside of themselves, and that probably includes you. I'm not trying to offend you. Again, just pay attention. The simple explanation of this is that there's simply no money to be made by you going inside of yourself. There's no profit there. Going inside of yourself would actually mean coming face to face with emotions that, from the moment you were born, capitalism has taught you are inherently bad. Emotions that you need to treat externally. Emotions like sadness or depression. Capitalism says that we need to basically consume to cure ourselves, to treat the symptoms of these things with products or pills or psychologists. Capitalism is always actively working to remove our capacity to address these things on a root level, because that hurts profits. The vast majority of people, 99.9% of people, literally wouldn't even have the first idea about how to truly treat something on a root level, because we've literally never known. That is like not part of our reality. And so as a result, most people live almost entirely in an external mode of being. Even the things that you think that you understand on an internal level, you probably only really understand on an external level, and that's part of the design. That is part of what effectively keeps you enslaved within this system. So let's go ahead and start diving into some actual examples. All we know is this external mode of existence, which again is where all the profit is. So this is why most people these days, given the option, don't even spend a second of any day alone, like without some sort of company. They bring their phone with them into the bathroom, or while they're eating, or when they go to bed, or maybe they watch TV until they fall asleep. The second they wake up, they're grabbing for their phone. And what people don't realize is these are all ways to escape having to be alone with yourself. And so, like, why are you afraid to be alone with yourself? It's because you are potentially putting yourself in a situation where you may actually have to go inside yourself. And that is a terrifying thought. We're taught to look at that as a terrifying thought because capitalism wants that to be terrifying, because there's no profit there. Capitalism does not want you there. And that much living in a matrix, even though that we think that we're not. Let's break down how consumerism works, which again is just the byproduct of capitalism. Consumerism is basically just a perpetual false promise of fulfillment. That's how it works. Basically, it promises that you can have fulfillment by acquiring something, by consuming something, usually in exchange for money. So once you consume that thing, you will realize that it doesn't fulfill you. Then there's something else that pops up that you need to consume for fulfillment, and it's basically a cycle. Then you consume that next thing, that doesn't fulfill you, and you basically just keep doing this until you die. It's just a carrot at the end of a stick. Right? Imagine what would happen if you actually did find true fulfillment by consuming something. Like consumerism would literally implode on itself. That can't happen. That's the engine that keeps the whole thing running. It's designed to convince you that you can have fulfillment by consuming, while at the same time making sure that you can never have fulfillment by consuming. If you're watching this video and you worship the idea of having a Lamborghini or a luxury yacht, if you believe that consuming these things will bring you fulfillment, I can't help you. That's by design. Capitalism makes the very idea of not having these things extremely unattractive, so you're kind of trapped. The best that I can do with my words is just to plant the seed, to maybe show you the door, so that one day when you do actually obtain these material things, when you consume these things and you don't feel fulfilled because you won't, maybe you can better understand why. Even after I had my epiphany moment back in 2011, and my epiphany moment was where I basically walked through the door. I started to see all the falseness around me. I started to see the actual walls of this matrix that I'm describing. I still wanted these material things. And it wasn't until I had a lot of money, it wasn't until I was able to purchase these material things that I was really fully able to realize just how much these things don't create fulfillment. I kind of had the idea that these things wouldn't fulfill me, but I still wanted them. I was still kind of helplessly ingrained into the system, and it was only when I had them that I fully realized that I fully understood. And listen, like you should want to have money, like have enough so that you don't have to fear how you're going to feed yourself or your family. My dad always made sure that he made enough money to put my mom in the safest car, and enough money so that we could live in areas with access to good schools. But where you get into danger is with the overconsumption, right? Humans consume, that's nature. But where we get into problems is where we overconsume. And we're being taught more and more to overconsume. And what happens when you consume and consume and consume and you don't replenish at an equal rate the source that you're consuming from? Let's take a breath here for a second. My point in all of this, again, is to help you to develop better vision, to be able to see how everything around you, everything is designed to keep you living in the external, to work more and more at making you a more ideal consumer, make you better at consuming things. So part of developing that vision is to understand your external and getting to the point where you understand that material things are not what create fulfillment. That's part of the path to self-actualize, to go inside of yourself. You will have to understand your external. In fact, the better that you understand your external, the greater your ability will be to understand yourself on a more root level. All right, break's done. Let's dive back in again. So corporations basically control everything, right? Including government. And I think you know that on some level. Even though 5 years ago, if you thought that, you were crazy, right? So the world is opening their eyes to an extent, but again, on a very, very superficial, external level. Now, the truly important thing to understand is this. Corporations control everything, right? Including government. Those two things basically work together, and what they do is they water the weeds, so to speak. And here's the thing, like we are the weeds. That is the insidious thing about consumerism, is that it's promulgated more on an individual level than it is on a corporation level. Again, they just water the weeds. We are the weeds. And by the way, it's not just a group of evil people controlling everything. This is the natural evolution of a system designed to maximize profit. The true power of any system like that is inevitably and invariably going to evolve so that the entities that create the most profit have the most power, and those entities are corporations. So, how do we promulgate consumerism on an individual level? Like, why are we the weeds? We live in a culture now where if you buy something of high material value, you have to share it with others, right? Usually through social media, because part of the fulfillment equation of consumerism is external validation. Again, we live in a world of the external. So when you buy something material, you share it on Facebook and you receive external validation for that. So let's go a little bit deeper. And again, please pay attention. When someone buys something material of really high value, they're buying it with the expectation that it's going to create fulfillment, even though in most cases it will not create at least real fulfillment. Now, what happens is that when someone buys something with the expectation that it's going to create fulfillment, and when their entire reality is predicated in external validation, they can and will actually feel fulfillment, but it's not real fulfillment. So they will feel fulfillment on a surface level, on an external level, while on a root level, they do not have the capacity to access, they're not even able to acknowledge what they feel on a root level, and it's not fulfillment. So let's say they buy the Lambo. Now, if they post a photo of their Lambo on social media, and they will, and they have to, because that's part of the fulfillment equation. It involves that external validation that they get to have. They get to have other people acknowledge the expensive thing that they purchased. Part of the feeling of fulfillment involves other people acknowledging your fulfillment, real or not. Are you still with me? So they can and will actually feel fulfillment, but it's not real fulfillment. So they'll feel fulfillment on a surface level, on an external level, while on a root level, they don't even have the capacity to acknowledge what's going on a root level. And on a root level, they do not feel fulfillment, right? Okay, so they post a photo of the Lamborghini to social, and they're not going to say, hey, here's my Lamborghini. At a root level, I don't feel fulfilled, because again, that's not even something that they have the capacity to understand. They feel fulfilled on a superficial level, and again, part of that fulfillment is rooted in external validation. Part of the fulfillment that you expect when you buy a Lamborghini is the fulfillment you're going to get from the external validation you're going to receive when other people see that you've purchased a Lamborghini. So now this is where the scoring system comes into play. This is where, it's how can I get the most likes possible? So sometimes they'll post a photo with the Lamborghini and they'll say, here's my Lamborghini, fuck you. And these are the people that have reached the ultimate evolution of consumerism, which is just full-blown materialism. And these people are just total mindless slaves, right? Their form of external validation is simply through acknowledgement. And they know by posting, fuck you, here's my Lambo, they're going to be acknowledged. And that's their external validation. That's part of their fulfillment equation, fulfillment formula. But then there are the people that get the Lamborghini and they go a different route. But the thing is that these are still mindless slaves, and probably even more so than the person I just described, right? They're using the same scoring system to try to get the most likes, thus more fulfillment. So what they'll do is they'll write a really humble post. Maybe they'll write about how if you work hard, you can have a Lamborghini too, which is actually just them using external validation to literally validate the fulfillment that they don't have. But I digress. My point here is that this humble post is not predicated in them knowing themselves. It's not coming from some truly internal origin. It's predicated in them seeking external fulfillment through external validation by understanding that they're going to get more likes if they write something humble instead of something dickish or braggish. It's the exact reason that now Mother's Day rolls around and people won't even wish their mother Happy Mother's Day in person. They do it on social media and they do it through this long, humble post because they need that external validation. They need to be liked, and they know that there's a whole scoring system behind it. Anyway, I'm digressing. The main thing to understand is that being liked is actually a big part of consumerism, and that's a big part of the promise of the fulfillment that you're supposed to feel, that you're supposed to receive by buying these physical things, is that you will be more popular and more people will like you. Because again, everything is rooted not in self, but in external, in this case, external validation. So let me summarize, because I know that's a lot to take in. We live in a world where someone can buy a Lamborghini expecting fulfillment, not feel fulfilled on a root level, but feel fulfilled on an external, superficial level. They will then share their perceived fulfillment to Facebook or wherever else, where simply by acknowledging their photo, you are helping them to externally validate their fake fulfillment, making them more sure that it's real fulfillment, even though all you're doing is actually making them more dependent on external validation. And then you, the viewer, interpret their superficial fulfillment as real fulfillment, and you draw the connection that for you to be fulfilled, and you think you're the master, but you're the slave. Lamborghini is the master. So within capitalism, we're all taught to strive for success, right? And so do me a favor, pause the video for a second. Let's do a little experiment. Close your eyes for a second and just think of the word success, right? And what comes to mind. So you probably don't think of things like finding yourself, right? Because that's not profitable. And within capitalism, you basically aren't allowed to associate good things with things that aren't profitable. So I think it's fair to say that most people more or less would define success as the extreme accumulation of material wealth, more or less. So that's why the Lamborghini is so strongly associated with what most people define as success. So do you see how we are actually the weeds, how we are what most perpetuate consumerism? And look where it's going. Like, look at the younger generations. Everything I'm describing is exactly why you now have 19-year-old wannabe entrepreneurs who put photos of Lamborghinis and private jets on their vision boards and idolize these things. It's not their fault. They literally don't know how to be any other way, and we are the ones that are doing this or are promulgating this unbeknownst to ourselves. Speaking of like entrepreneurship and wannabe entrepreneurs, this is another perfect example. Close your eyes for a second again. When I say the word entrepreneur, what are the first few words or emotions that pop into your head? Seriously, like take a few seconds and think about this for a second. Okay, so if you're being honest with yourself, the first few things that pop into your head are probably make lots of money, be your own boss, freedom, travel anywhere, work on a beach, probably all or at least mostly positive association. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that entrepreneurship is all of a sudden this cool thing? It's because that's how it's being fucking marketed to you. And why is it being marketed to you like this? Because capitalism always has an external fix for whatever your problems are. This is how profit-based systems work. Social media has exploded over the last decade. Like, you know that. And people use social media to share their happiness, but fuck, in most cases what they're doing is they're sharing their perceived happiness, just like we talked about in the Lamborghini example, which makes everything else just more fucked. Like, the net result is the more you engage with social, the more you are exposed to all of this fake fulfillment being portrayed as real fulfillment, the more unhappy you are in your life. And this is all by design. So in the case of entrepreneur now being a cool thing, basically what's happening is people who know how to make profit realize, okay, people are unhappy. They're especially unhappy with their jobs. They also want to travel more. They want to be externally validated on an individual level, be special, stand out, all things that perpetuate consumerism. Okay, let's market them entrepreneurship. So capitalists have been able to seize on the potential fulfillment aspects of entrepreneurship and then sell the fuck out of them to you. And that's why right now you have so many people that are basically trying to be entrepreneurs. And then I think what's most interesting is what are the young ones doing? Like, what do the young ones do? Because these are the ones that have been hit hardest by all of this. These are the ones that are the most enslaved, right? What do? They put up photos of themselves looking at a phone and put some sort of caption like hustle hard or making my dreams a reality, or they just Google inspirational quote and copy paste something. And why are they doing this? It's because, one, they think that these are all of the things that being an entrepreneur is, because that's how it's being marketed to them. And the second thing is that they need external validation to feel fulfilled. So you believing that they are actually an entrepreneur is more important than them actually being an entrepreneur, because external validation has evolved to be the most important thing, because that's the most profitable thing. I know a lot of entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs that I know that are actually successful have worked their fucking asses off, and it is not for everyone, right? I'm an entrepreneur, and I guess you could say I'm happy like these days, but I would also say that I am a very, very specific personality type, and most people are not my personality type. I work 7 days a week, holidays, I worked on my birthday, Christmas, New Year's. I'm not saying that successful entrepreneurs have to do the same, but to really have success as an entrepreneur, so unless you get lucky, yeah, that's pretty much the level. You need to be on a very, very high level to have success. Most successful entrepreneurs that I know take very few vacations, have spent many years struggling, don't have families. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. This isn't your typical career. When you become an entrepreneur, you are literally now competing on a macro level. You're competing against other businesses. you want to compete against me, and you're going to work half days and take vacations and work from a beach with spotty Wi-Fi, like I will fucking eat you alive. Again, entrepreneur is a sexy thing right now because smart capitalists have figured out that the perceived fulfillment that you get from the positive potential of being an entrepreneur is the perfect cure for people who are unsatisfied at their jobs, which is pretty much everyone. You're actually not supposed to be satisfied no matter what job you work. Again, capitalism promises fulfillment while at the same time making sure that you are never fulfilled. If the entrepreneur pitch started with the truth, which is that you're going to work for years before you see any sort of payoff, you're going to have to make tremendous sacrifices, you're going to have to somehow be okay watching your friends advance in stable careers, the same careers that you were like corralled into for most of your life, while you labor away in something that has no guarantees and may end up being a complete failure. I don't know. I don't think it would be as sexy a thing right now. Now listen, can entrepreneurship be a path to fulfillment? Absolutely. You know, this isn't a critique of entrepreneurship. I'm just trying to help you guys understand why it's suddenly become a sexy thing, how all of this works. The consumer model will grab anything that it can to give you the promise of fulfillment, and it will sell it to you really aggressively, and it will actively look for where people are most discontent, and it will find something that can be sold to them that represents the fix. Don't even get me started on travel bloggers, right? Their entire existence is literally predicated on you consuming their perceived fulfillment. I've met travel bloggers. I've even lived with travel bloggers, and as a whole, they are fucked. I'm not saying that they're all miserable. I haven't met every travel blogger in the world, but every single one that I have met is miserable, and I'm definitely saying that they are disproportionately miserable to the rest of the population. They always have to be projecting that they are fulfilled. In fact, the happier and more fulfilled that they represent themselves as being, the more successful they are. It's a direct link. And so almost by definition, these are some of the least actualized people you will ever meet. And so unfortunately, another big thing to understand is that some of the stuff you can only really understand when you experience it yourself. Like me personally, I had to actually go through a phase where I was traveling and I was trying to grow my business, and I had to actually realize for myself, first of all, I'm lonely as hell. And there's no way that I'm going to grow my business while I travel, at least not to the level that I want to grow my business. Again, that was just my personal experience. It's why I said that if you worship the idea of having a Lamborghini, I don't think that there's anything that I can say that will really sway you from that. To the person that worships a Lambo, like not having a Lambo just isn't appealing. It's actually designed to not be appealing. Now, let's go even deeper. Because your entire reality is predicated in the external, you will actually want to exist there. It's uncomfortable to not be in the external. And this next part is really important. You will actually want to latch on to external solutions to real or perceived problems, even if these things can only truly be addressed internally. The perfect example of this are these commercials for pills that cure things, right? And they'll list out all these symptoms, and they'll say, are you suffering from loneliness or depression? Capitalism has even evolved to the point, it's evolved so much so now, that it can even create symptoms that aren't even really symptoms. And so anyway, they'll list out a ton of things. Pretty much anyone is going to identify with some of the things on that list. And the fucked up part about it is you will actually want to identify with those things because those things are external, and you've been taught to treat symptoms and not root causes. You are conditioned to want to treat your problems externally because that is what is profitable. Take depression, right? So if you really want to treat depression, you need to literally sit there with your depression, realize that your depression is not good or bad. It's an emotion. Emotions are produced as reactions to things, and you need to sit there and be alone and figure out what those things are. We have no idea how to do that because we were never even given the tools. That's not even a possibility. Within capitalism, it hurts profit if we learn to do those things. Addressing these things externally is all you've ever known. And so when you see that commercial for that pill and it lists out all those symptoms, you will actually want to attribute your depression or whatever symptom you're experiencing to something on that list because that's how you've been conditioned. You want to believe that it's an external problem. Pharmaceutical companies are some of the companies with the most power because they make the most profit. They thrive on people seeking external solutions to symptoms. In fact, they've evolved so much that, again, they're now creating fake symptoms for you to identify with and address externally. I've heard ADHD is safer than aspirin. Flu shots are necessary. Mentally ill people have chemical imbalances that can only be fixed with pills. So again, while the corporations water the weeds, we are the weeds. Like, people don't just believe that they need the flu shot, they believe that you need the flu shot, and you are an idiot if you disagree. And they feel passionately about this, so much so that they're ready to fight you over it. And they don't even understand the reasons why they want to fight you over it. Good luck trying to have a conversation with a parent whose kid has ADHD. Look at nutrition, right? Carbs, sugar, Cheerios are good for your heart. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Western nutrition as a whole, and you know this, is a fucking wasteland of false information, doctored studies designed to maximize profits for corporations and turn you into more of a consumer. Until real nutrition is profitable, it will never be popular. So what is an ideal consumer, right? An ideal consumer is someone who is gullible, weak, impulsive, unhealthy, looks for quick fixes and believe they have lots of things wrong with them, has inaccurately skewed negative perceptions of completely normal human emotions like sadness, loneliness. They feel inferior, they're always looking for shortcuts, they're always actively seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. Little Tony Robbins for you. Everything in your life is always working directly and indirectly to try to turn you into a more ideal consumer. What is a non-ideal consumer? A non-ideal consumer is someone with good self-awareness, who's happy and grateful for what they have. They address problems at their root causes. Do you see how not profitable that is? Even the stuff that's specifically designed to turn an ideal consumer into a non-ideal consumer, self-improvement content, is still more profitable when you keep consuming it and instead of actually becoming autonomous, which is what it's supposed to do, right? So think about this for a second. Like, what is self-improvement stuff supposed to do? It's supposed to take an ideal consumer, what I just described a second ago, and turn them into a non-ideal consumer. Give them autonomy to be in control of themselves. But in a capitalistic system, more often than not, that is not what happens. And then also look at the people creating self-improvement content, right? They're not making money unless you continue to consume their content. So if they write a book and you are now filled with power and you just like leave because you're autonomous, you no longer have any real value to them. And here's the problem. These self-improvement people, this content, it may actually be very well intentioned. Their intentions are rooted positively, but on an external level. So on an internal level, on a subconscious level that they're not able to connect with, they're actually designing this stuff in a way that you can continue to consume it without ever truly developing autonomy. And you actually want to keep consuming because that is easier than actually taking action. That is easier than going within yourself. It's less scary. And so these guys that are creating this stuff, they're not even aware that they're doing it because they're dependent on your consumption. Ultimately, they're just unconscious cogs. Like we're all just unconscious cogs in this invisible machine. And that is why my main point is that you have to open your eyes to this stuff. If you want to go inside, you must understand how things work on the outside. Everything is designed to turn you into a more ideal consumer. Corporations control government, and the two work together in concert, and they water the weeds. But we are the weeds. We are the weeds. We are the weeds. Hey guys, sorry, I get a little passionate sometimes. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, if you got some value from it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have a question or feedback, please leave a comment. I'm actually really curious to see what you guys think about some of the stuff I covered in this video. And one last thing I want to share, and I won't go into detail on this because I know this video is already like 30 minutes long, but I think it's only fair. This part in particular, I want to say thank you to my teacher, Casey. I have a Taoist teacher that I work with every week, roughly, to help me just better understand my reality. These are the steps to the solution for all of this. Step one is finding your own way to disconnect from consumption as a way to feel better. That's not easy, and that takes time, and unfortunately in most cases it takes experiencing the stuff for yourself firsthand. Step two is to begin to determine what calls to you, what really feels important to you, to become more conscious of what actually fulfills you. And more often than not, that's going to involve taking taking risks, taking big risks. Step 3 is to form communities to become stronger in. And step 4 is to begin to act together and decide what to change towards. Right now, I'm at step 3. This Nelson Quest stuff, this video, I'm not doing this for profit. I have nothing to sell you. And a big part of the reason that I'm committed to not making money with my content is because I don't want to consciously or subconsciously or otherwise be affected by profit. I'm trying to be as authentic as I possibly can. I understand that I have a limit to how authentic I could be within capitalism, and I'm trying to do everything that I can to put the odds in my favor, so to speak. Ultimately, the stuff that I'm creating right now, the content that I'm creating is the sort of stuff that I wish I had 7 years ago when I was starting on this journey. And so if you feel like you're on a similar journey, I highly encourage you. I would ask you to please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to continue to create content just like this. I think if you're on a similar journey to me, you will benefit immensely from it. And I would love for you to just join the community that I'm creating. Good people trying to find power, trying to be better. Let's create a community, a movement, and let's really move towards something positive. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you really enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.